Is it time to reveal your real magic and become seen, known, and valued? Hello and welcome to this video and to my world of soulful visibility. So shifting your energy so you can show up and share the gifts, the magic, the wisdom that only you can share. So I'm Rionach and Soulful Visibility Guide, and today I'm talking about the poem that ignited my unstoppable commitment. So really, igniting commitment can be something that's elusive. We all kind of want to be committed, and sometimes we know when we are and we know when we're not, and it can be a hard thing to switch on really energetically. You can kind of say, okay, I'm going to show up and be disciplined and get things done, but it's not quite the same thing as I am really feeling the commitment to take the next big, bold baby step that I am here to take. And when you are feeling called to share your gifts, to be visible in the world, we have to ride the roller coaster that comes with that, the ups and the downs, the I don't feel like it today, the fears of putting yourself out there or stepping into the next level, whatever that wants to show up for you, and that enables you to be resilient in the face of challenges, to step forward and keep doing what it is that you are called to do on a soul level. So I want to share the story about commitment. And last week I shared the poem that broke through my visibility blocks, and how a poem can break through your visibility blocks. And I'll share a link here to that video. And so this story today is a story of one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had, sharing a poem with someone. And this took place around about a year after the story in the last video of the poem that helped me break through my visibility blocks. So it's like a continuation of another story that came after this. So in that last video, I was sharing how this poem supported me to break through deep visibility blocks around stepping into leadership, around becoming a CEO. And so this story starts when I'm in the role, I'm a busy CEO, and the next big breakthrough in my visibility that came along. So this was the summer of 2014, and my mum came to visit me in England from Ireland, and she gave me a copy of a new book that had just come out. And I knew the author a little bit because he was a friend of my sister's and her husband's, and Simon Fitzmaurice. He's since passed, and you'll understand why when I tell you more about the story. But he was an award winning filmmaker. He'd been to Sundance and got an award there, and he was also a really talented writer who just written his own memoir, his life story, because he was also someone who had been for a number of years suffering from motor neuron disease, also known as ALS, a disease. And he wrote this incredible book called It's Not Yet Dark, about his experience. And when he was, finishing the book, he was using an eye gaze computer to finish the book, because he had lost the use of his hands, he had lost the use of his voice at this stage. And his writing is beautiful. It's very poetic. And so to take you into his world, I'm going to share a little bit of his book. I do not eat or drink or walk or talk the way you do. I don't breathe without a machine helping me night and day. I cannot move my arms or legs, and yet I'm still man. I've lost so much, and yet I'm still here. I feel everything, the slightest feather touch anywhere on my body. And my heart is alive to meaning, to value, to love, which is all it's ever been about. And his book is an incredible love story, and his love of life is in there as well. And I stayed up all night reading his book and his story. It just blew my heart wide open because it's really an incredible book, incredible story, incredible human. And as I read his words, this poem that I knew pretty well kept coming to me. And the poem and his book seemed to be speaking to each other. And it kept coming, pouring through me, and it wouldn't go away for days. And so I had the deep knowing that I needed to share this poem with Simon, but not just email it to him or send him a message with it, but to record the poem for him so I could infuse the energy of the poem and my speaking of the poem with his story and how it had touched me. So let me share the poem with you. It's called The Layers by Stanley Kunitz. Beautiful, beautiful poem. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was. Though some principle of being abides, from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look, before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling towards the horizon, and the slow fires trailing from abandoned campsites, over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. So that's The Layers by Stanley Kunitz, and that's it. It's also in my ebook, The Speaking Yourself into Being, which is a bonus for those who come on the Magnetic Presence retreat, which I'll tell you about later. So that poem is in that beautiful ebook. But this, poem for Simon, so I took the day off work, even though I was very busy CEO. That was a big deal for me. I recorded the poem and, spoke it just for him and sent it to him. And, here's somebody who's so isolated. He inhabits the same world as the rest of us, but he's very different existence. So there's so much loss and loneliness there. How can the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? And yet I turn, exulting somewhat, my will intact to go wherever I need to go, because this, Simon was someone with incredible will. And my recording of this poem, it blew him away. And he sent me a message. He said, your reading of the layers spoke to me at the deepest level. Your voice becoming my voice, speaking about my life. And that it really moved me, because I didn't know him that well. And there was just this intimacy and connection in the sharing through this poem that kind of really blew us both away. And it helped him to understand and make sense of his story. There was huge loss, and he had this phenomenal will to go on. I am not done with my changes. His was a story of incredible commitment, of overcoming impossible obstacles every step of the way. There's so much in his book and his journey of navigating this diagnosis of his disease that was so incredibly inspiring, and he wasn't done yet. But this is how the right poem at the right time for all of us can reach inside your heart, can help you to feel, and I've felt this often myself, can help you to feel so profoundly seen by the poem that you see yourself in new ways. And visibility is about seeing yourself first, about connecting to the truth of who you are, and then that gives you the courage to show up and share that essence, that magic with the world. And the more you see, and I've seen this time and time again with clients and people in my groups who've found the right poem and just kind of going, oh my God, this is it, this is making sense, this is giving me courage for the next chapter, and it creates this profound inner witnessing and acceptance that's so intimate. This sense of witnessing, of being witnessed in a good way is so powerful. And there's another quote from a book that I want to share with you today. This is from a book called Wright, called Breaking the Rules. And it's like, we can only trust that part of ourselves which we have revealed to another person and had validated instead of violated. So we can only trust that part of ourselves which we have revealed to another person and had validated rather than violated. So the more of ourselves we can trust, the more of ourselves that we've had validated, something in us kind of relaxes, and the more easily we can trust ourselves, we can take risks, we can move forward to do the things that we're called to do, often the scary things, the challenging things. So the poem, the right poem, can be an incredible tool for validating yourself, trusting yourself, seeing yourself, making sense of yourself. I remember one person on one of my retreats, I did an hour-long poetry dive where they're all lying on the floor, and I was speaking a number of poems, who got up afterwards and said, my whole life makes sense now. So how do you do that? And so this is, really what a poem, what poetry can do. So just take a moment to, what's landing with you here? What could open up for you if you could find something, you know, a poem, a person, an experience that saw you so deeply it gave you the courage to take your next big, bold baby step. Because, you know, I actually offer poetry prescriptions as part of the Magnetic Presence Retreat and also in my one-on-one coaching. So I'll put some links in for those below. But back to the story, because the most amazing part for me came next. And, you know, and so for Simon as well. So as well as his heart opening, his personal memoir, his book, It's Not Yet Dark, Simon had also written a gorgeous original movie script called My Name is Emily. And everyone who read the script fell in love with it, and he was successful at raising funding. People like Colin Farrell and Alan Rickman were kind of, you know, on his team, helping him with fundraising and really supporting him. And, you know, so that was amazing. But Simon didn't just want to be the scriptwriter. Even with his disability, even though he couldn't speak, he could only move his eyes. He actually wanted to direct the movie. So no one knew if he could do it. His health was up and down, although all the funding was in place, including the extra support he needed. He spent a lot of time in bed in the months leading up to the film shoot. And to direct the movie, he needed to be up and dressed and on set at 7 a.m. And that took a team of carers and nurses, and it took him having more energy than he was demonstrating. And he was really, you know, doing this impossible task, facing these incredible obstacles for someone in his condition, and often being the only one who to truly believe that he was capable of it. Because a lot of people said, he's amazing, we just don't know if this is going to happen. And he played that recording of the poem every night. And that helped him when he got down. It kept him going. It gave him courage. It anchored him in to his vision. It anchored his fierce commitment. You know, I am not done with my changes. My will is intact to go where I need to go without knowing how or even if it was possible. It's an energy of pure commitment that carries you through. You know, this poem was, his commitment was, and he found the energy in himself. He dug deep and he found the energy reserves to direct his movie, My Name is Emily. And as far as I'm aware, he was the first person in the world to direct a full-length feature film only using his eyes, using this eye gaze technology to communicate. So it was an incredibly inspiring to play a part in, you know, that story, you know, being one of the many people who was energetically behind him and supporting him to do what he knew was possible. And he was such an inspiration for so many people with his life, with his work, with his words. So just take a moment here. What does this story ignite in you? What would be possible for you if you could ignite this kind of commitment in yourself? You know, because a poem can be such a powerful companion to keep you moving forward as well as witnessing you. It's like it can fire up your commitment. Remind yourself of your motivation, your dream, your possibility. I've so many stories that I could tell about this for myself and with different people. Like this, the last one I shared on breaking through, the one that helped me to, you know, fire up my commitment and possibility to step into leadership. So it's not just the commitment, but it's the energetic possibility of fueling that dream and that commitment. So when I committed last year to writing my book on soulful visibility, one of the first things I asked myself is, what poem can keep me company through this journey? And I got the answer pretty quickly, and it was not one, but actually two, a piece of a much longer poem, and one that I'd written myself. I'll share more about that another time. But it was like, okay, what medicine do I need to keep me company on this journey that will hold me to the highest vision, that will keep bringing my energy back into possibility when, life wears me down, distracts me, disencourages me, all of the things that life can do. It can help me stay in this possibility energy. And so the next part of the story, as well as sharing the poem with Simon, as well as that poem helping him to go ahead and create his beautiful My Name is Emily movie, is my experience with Simon, with reading his book, with sharing that poem, with seeing the profound impact that a poem could have, and witnessing his inspiring journey of being unstoppable. It inspired me to make a huge commitment of my own, because I had this huge fire in my belly about, I'd fallen in love with transformational poetry and what was possible, and this magical experience just amplified that for me. It's just like, oh my God, because I was like, why is no one else talking about this? Why aren't people talking about transformational poetry the way they talk about yoga and mindfulness? This needs to be out there. This needs to be shared. This needs to be a thing. And I had this passion for that. And eventually I realized, okay, no one else is coming. If this idea is not leaving me alone, then maybe I need to do something about it. I need to play my own part in spreading the word about this magical transformational poetry stuff. So in 2014, after this experience with Simon, I committed to creating an interview series where I would interview the leaders that I knew and some that I didn't even know yet, who in the field of transformational poetry, who had done tons of work in this area. So I created the Poetry Alchemy for Our Times interview series. There was a few people I already knew to get me started, and then others, I was like, let me see what happens when I reach out and ask people to do this. And it was really because it's like, well, if he can do that, if he can go and direct a movie when he can only use his eyes, then I can do this. It was really motivating. But there were lots of reasons that I had not to do it. I was a busy CEO running, a valuable but struggling non-profit that served thousands of people, vulnerable people in my community that needed a lot of TLC to get it to where it wanted to be. And I was still terrified. I'd had my visibility breakthrough, stepping into leadership and becoming a CEO and having a lot of eyes on me in that way, and that was a huge deal. But I was still terrified of being publicly online, putting this stuff out there that was, a bit more spiritual and intuitive and woo-woo, when I was this professional CEO. And I was in tears recording my first video. It was another huge visibility stretch. And I was like, and I also had that, well, who am I to do this? I'm not an expert in this. Why would any leaders want to speak to me? Who am I to put myself forward? And I had a huge learning curve. There were so many things that I'd never done before. I'd never interviewed people. My first interview was pretty awful, but luckily my subject was great and kept me going, because I was like, oh yeah, questions, yes. Audio editing, opt-ins, mailing lists, reaching out to speakers, creating websites. It was a huge, massive learning curve for me, and I was busy. So it really stretched me, it really terrified me. But my passion for this power of poetry and sharing this medicine and my experience just carried me through. So, what commitment is calling to you right now? Is there something that you thought, oh, if I was unstoppable, I could access that energy of unstoppability or breaking through this thing in the way, what commitment, what project, what creation to step into a new way of being, of doing something differently, showing up in a new way, something, what's been whispering to you in your dreams, or knocking on your door, coming up again and again in conversations, and who might you be? Who might you be if you responded to that call, however imperfectly, because we never have to do it perfectly. So just take a moment to reflect on that. What commitment is calling to you? And commitment doesn't have to look a certain way. It's not all about doing. Sometimes the commitment is about waiting. It's about doing nothing. It's about trusting. It's about nurturing that seed and strengthening your inner resolve and waiting until the next steps ripens and drops in. And sometimes, yes, it is about taking massive action when that's, calling you. Sometimes you actually feel more at ease in motion, because the holding back creates a lot of tension and anxiety and spinning, and actually being in motion is like, oh, finally, I'm getting it out of my system. But commitment is about willingness. It's about being all in without knowing how, without knowing what's possible, without knowing if you can or if you will succeed. Doing it no matter what. So win or learn. So, it's not about pushing. It's kind of really your, channeling your life force where it wants to go and being willing to go where it takes you. And sometimes we equate commitment with pushing. I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock and I'm going to get it done. And sometimes when we're trying to prove that we're committed, that we have what it takes, pushing hard to prove that you're good enough will often reinforce the old story that you believe that you're not. Because if you're trying to prove that you're committed by doing, you're not in the energy of commitment. You're actually in the energy of pushing and proving. So pushing is not about working harder. So what can you relate to here? What can you relate to here? Commitment is not something that can be forced. It's an energy. And it is about listening to and trusting your energy. So when you're committed, and you can also feel it when you're not. So, we can cultivate commitment by turning towards it, by holding space for it, not pushing it away and not forcing it, but get present to how it's inviting us to participate. And one of the most, I hope you've already got this message, from this video, but one of the fastest, most gentle and incredibly deep and magical ways of cultivating true soul deep and organic commitment is choosing and working with a soul poem inside a deep container where you're really engaged with the medicine of that poem and how it's interacting with your magic and your medicine. So that's something that's calling to you. I want to let you know about opportunities to do that. There's the upcoming Magnetic Presence Retreat which is really designed to help you, rewrite old stories by you choosing a poem that's got the perfect medicine for what you need at this time. And then working with that poem in the retreat. And I help you to do that with the poetry prescription. In the retreat, working to embody that poem, to infuse it with your deeper truth. So for Simon, it was like, I'm not done with my changes. My will is intact to go wherever I need to go. And every stone on the road is precious to me. Everything that's getting in my way, I am engaging with it. And the energy of that, you're embodying this new story that's infused with this truth, and that creates an organic unstoppability that's not pushing and that's not holding back. And in this, retreat, you also have this powerful experience of being witnessed, of witnessing and being witnessed, of being validated and not violated, of being seen as who you are by the participants. I set it up in a way that is an incredibly sacred part of the journey, because our visibility wounds are often formed in a relationship and they are healed. They are profoundly healed in relationship as well, where we're deeply, deeply seen and witnessed and validated by others. And the poem is a companion that will keep you going, that will stay with you for life, and that will continue rewiring and living into this new energy and being with you as you commit and take steps on your journey into your next level. So if this is calling you, get in touch, join us for the Magnetic Presence Retreat that's coming up in April. I also do this one-to-one, if that's also calling to you as well. But I would love to hear in the comments below what you're taking away from this. What commitment is being ignited in you, and what can walk beside you as a companion to validate and ignite and fuel your commitment as you step forward. So let me know in the comments below, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye for now.